See, user choose state? What if I'm in that state and an event happens that's not supposed to happen? Does it change the state? So if you look at the coffee machine model, it starts off, it's idle. You put money in, then you choose the type of coffee, then it brews the coffee and you drink your coffee. It's a simple model, it's a state model. Well, what if an event happens when it's in the wrong state? So what if you put money in when it's in the choose coffee state? What happens? Now, you might think this never happens. No, this happens all the time. Is people try to trigger transitions when they're not supposed to trigger. And believe it or not, there's tons of cool bugs in systems. When you look at laser printers, push the button at the wrong time. Like open the case and then change the size of the paper when it's open. Now, can you do that? Should you be able to do that? I don't know. What you're trying to do is trigger a state transition when it's not supposed to be happening. So that's what I love, a sort of testing idea from a stateful system. Can I trigger a transition when it's not supposed to happen? So this is stateful test ideas again. If you have a state model, they're not for everybody. Not all systems have that. Another one, data. I'm sure many people here have applications which have rich data. You have anyone with rich data? A lot of you guys? No? Data. No data in Malaysia. We used to have data, but we exported it, right? No? We outsourced our data to India? No? Okay, so didn't outsource your data. That's a very, very obvious thing, data. Instead of looking at the functionality of the system, we look at the data of the system. Where does it come from? Where does it go to? What are the different pathways the data can take through the system? Data flow. What about anytime there's persistent data? How do we, the CRUD thing, how do we save it, restore it, change its state, all of these things? What about data migration? The version 1 comes out, version 2 comes out, version 3 comes out. Can I migrate data from version 1 to version 3? What about if I go from 1 to 2 to 7, 1 to 3 to 7, 1 to 2 to 3 to 7? Those are data conversion paths. If you have a data-centric application, just looking at data would be a source of testing ideas. Not transactions, not usage scenarios, not capabilities, but actually data, the flow and pathway of data through the system. It's a beautiful, beautiful source of testing ideas for data-centric applications. Of course, we can have tons and tons of environment-oriented test ideas, and these ideas may be specific to, as I said before, supported or unsupported environments. Consider stuff that's in your control or outside of your control. This becomes a very rich and critical thing today, especially when people are running mobile applications and things like that. You get so many different versions of so many different platforms, of so many different types of devices that we have to basically take into account the variations. It's very complex type of code. So we're seeing an increase in this type of testing ideas, environment-based testing ideas. We have a style of testing idea called the white box testing idea. The term, how long was the handout? You're so discreet. Yell out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, actually I wanted you to go back to
Yeah.
the...
Which one? Previous one?
On the data.
Data. Yes. Data.
I'm not sure whether you're going to cover it later on, but...
Well, today we only have a little bit of time, but tell me what you're interested in. Yeah.
This is, from where I'm coming from, I'm struggling with the test data. Test data, creation of test data to test. So can you share a little bit in terms of the...
Creating test data. Yes. It's a very, very broad topic. A very broad topic. It's certainly, for this course perspective, it's a beautiful source of testing ideas. So all of the struggles you have, each and every one of them, think of that as a source of testing ideas. So I think it's beautiful to struggle and to look at that and say, if I'm struggling, then the developer's struggling and the customer's struggling, so we have data-related things. What's hard to do? And that becomes an interesting thing to test. In terms of data sets, though, I have worked with customers all around the world who manage test data in many different ways. It is far from my expertise, but I would be delighted to, if you want to talk to me offline a little bit, to give me a little context, to point you to some references or resources on the subject. There's many parts of data issues. There's data generation, there's data modeling, there's big data, there's also especially at, for example, the unit test level today, there's mocking data, setting it up so that we can actually automate testing around it. These are beautiful problems, but a little bit big for the scope of today. Today, what I'm urging you to do is, if you have difficulties with data, not to learn, but to turn that into source of testing ideas. I think it's a good one. But if you can give me a little more specifics now, it might help you a little bit. Otherwise, perhaps we should take this offline.
Specifically because if I'm having a new application,
Yes.
all right, and I'm coming from a banking environment,
Yes.
there's a lot of formulas that I need to test, right? And I'm not sure whether the developers, when they convert my requirement to the development, whether the methodology or whether the formulas that they develop is similar to what I'm expecting.
There's, how big are your real commercial databases? Is this multiple terabytes of data, or is it a couple of megabytes of data? How big are they?
This is big.
Terabytes?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's certainly strategies that customers I have. When you have large data and moral and ethical constraints, for example, the testing and development team are not allowed to use the real data. Is that true in your case? You're not allowed to use real data? So customers will, for example, Visa is one customer, but there's other banks that I work with and insurance companies, and they have a department which their whole job is to help you generate test data sets. And so basically you tell this department what type of customers, what type of data, what type of transaction histories you want, and they will set up for you a simulated test database with records like that. So that's what some of the big giants do. Also, many of my customers, what they do is they actually are allowed to have a test system with real data in it. And what they do on a periodic basis, I'm specifically thinking of, there's a department of the Government of Canada I work with, that on a monthly basis, they backfire from production into the system test environment an image of the real data. So the data they have is similar to production, but within about 30 days variance. But this takes a dedicated person to be making sure that we have the test data available. I don't agree that that's the best strategy, but it's something I've seen done. And they got so caught up in it, they loved it, but then they're dealing with all this confidential data, so it was very restrictive who was allowed to get it. And I prefer to create sanitized data. In the medical software business, where we had ridiculous constraints on real data, so we're never allowed to touch real data. What we did was we basically came up with mechanisms to sanitize the data. But that took a full-time team of people to come up with mechanisms to do that. And you have to be very careful not to let someone indirectly interpret like real data, even if it's just, for example, the statistical distribution. We're concerned in Canada about being able to tell which region has which disease. So if you keep the sicknesses the same, by looking at the graphs, you can tell where it is. And that would be breaking the privacy. So I'm concerned about privacy. If you're allowed real data, backfire from production periodically. Monthly is what I've seen done. If you're not allowed to do that from real data, then it's really important to have a team. And the team doesn't have to be a big team. It even could be part-time. But it's important that for the developers, they also use the service of that team, because in unit testing, it's very important to try to mock data, but real data. So you should get realistic data. It shouldn't just be a little bit of code the developer wrote. It should be well thought through data. So there's ideas about that. I've seen in some countries beautiful data stuff where there's a lot of effort on looking for changes in data and risks around that. But I'm not familiar with the tools. I just know that that's a source of testing ideas. So take the data problems you have, partially turn them into sources of ideas. And if you want to talk offline, I can share with you some insights, because I need a lot of context, and it's probably too much out of my expertise. But I did play a lot with data. It's just that I don't have a general answer. And probably I can find you some reference books on the subject too. So is that a beginning?
So,
A beginning. Let's call that.